devotion, thy name is Granny. I'm reviewing the Shudder original movie, Anything for Jackson. Hey Twisted people, it's your Twisted Woman here, Chauncey K. Robinson, and today I am doing a spoiler-free review of the Shudder original movie, Anything for Jackson. And I would do anything for Pato. Yes. So stop this review. Anything for Jackson follows an elderly couple determined to bring back their departed grandson and willing to go to extreme measures to make it happen. After a young pregnant woman enters their life, the duo turns to Satanism to reach their goal. But before long, all heck breaks loose in their suburban bubble. Wow. What can I say about Anything for Jackson? The first thing that popped in my head after I finished it was, this is probably by far one of my favorite, if not my favorite, horror movie of 2020. And I've got a couple of reasons for that. The plot line is uniquely told. It's not so much that we haven't heard this story before about someone who's lost a loved one trying to bring them back from the dead in some kind of way. I think it's the way that the movie goes about the grandparents attempting to do this. One with the, pregnant young woman that they, do this ritual or whatever through. And I think it's interesting the way they go about how the grandparents plan this, how they carry it out, the things that occur once they carry it out, the things that occur when they carry it out. I just think this is such a cool type of story when you have so many, I love all types of subgenres in the horror genre itself. But I will say sometimes there is an overabundance of like slasher films and films where there's already just some mass killer going around, because sometimes that's kind of the most relatable or the one that's kind of a quick go-to. And it's very nice to have a story that deals with the spiritual world in a foreboding way, in a way that immerses you in it, but at the same time scares you, at the same time leaves you kind of just creeped out. And it's a genuinely creepy story, how this goes about, how it's done. And I really appreciated that, because it's not so much about the body count, or although there is a body count, there's not so much about the body count itself and even the gore of it, but more so the eeriness of tapping into something of the unknown. We see that sometimes with exorcist movies, but a lot of time, once again, it's a focus on the person being possessed and what happens when the person is possessed and things like that. And this story just kind of takes those kind of elements and remixes it in a way of putting it in different kind of places when it goes about the grandparents attempting to bring their grandson back. And I appreciated the uniqueness of how this story was told. It's also a very simple, straightforward plot line. It's not topsy-turvy. There's not a whole bunch of melodrama or weird twist or type things that just kind of distract you from this very effective plot line of what happens when, family members who are grieving try to bring something back. And I know we've touched upon that with Pet Sematary, if those who know that Stephen King story of what happens in that case and did things get buried and come back. This is not that. It's not even a biting of that. It's a totally different kind of concept with the idea of wanting to bring back one that has passed on that you love. But this is a totally different way that it's done. I love these characters. I just, I think, like I was saying about sometimes the overabundance of slasher films and horror monster type movies is that they tend to skew young, a lot of them, the mainstream ones anyway. There are ones where people do it from different perspectives, but that seems to be the go-to, to have a group of young kids just out of college, a group of young kids in high school mess with the seance. Oh my gosh. Things like that. And I don't mind those. Hey, I enjoy my, teen age or young adult slasher type subgenre of the horror genre. But with that said, I think there are so many other unique kind of stories to tell when you do it from characters who are in different walks of life, such as the grandparents in this film. They're older, they're in their late 60s, early 70s, and the characters are people you could kind of love. I think it makes it more interesting. And so I was just so happy to see a story focused on these older characters. Despite what's, I think, I don't know, corporate mainstream America likes to tell people life isn't over at like 40 or something, or like 30 even, how some of these companies and stuff like to tell you. So it's nice that this story incorporates that. So I just love the characters. And then the supporting characters are really good. The young pregnant woman, the fellow Satanist people that you see throughout the story, things like that. And it's just done so well. No one overplays their part. And so it is a small cast. It's not ridiculously, huge or anything, but each character that makes an appearance is not wasted. This is a scary movie. I thought this was scary. And I know, to me, when I review horror movies, I don't necessarily always lean on whether or not you're going to jump or whether or not you're going to want to turn off the lights after you finish, because that's not always what makes a horror movie effective. I mean, yes, it's great if it genuinely creeps you out, genuinely scares you, but it doesn't need to necessarily do that to be a quality film. There are plenty of horror movies I've seen where I wasn't necessarily scared, but I thought it was a well done movie in the genre of horror and fear. Now, when it comes to Anything for Jackson, I genuinely jumped a couple of times, and I genuinely was creeped out, because the thing is with jump scares too, sometimes certain movies have a lot of jump scares, so when it's first viewed, yes, it is effective, but it's not necessarily a movie you can revisit, because now that you know where the jump scares are, you're not as creeped out, right? This is not that kind of movie. This movie has jump scares, but it also has really eerie things that happen that I could see myself watching it again and still being creeped out. The way that the story is told, it's not one of those movies that rely a lot on, thank goodness, CGI or a whole bunch of effects. It's very simple in the sense of how it conveys terror, how it conveys things that are uneasy. When you're someone who you watch a lot of horror movies, it doesn't take the thrill out of it when you can sometimes figure out the ending. But it's nice to suddenly be surprised. It's a breath of fresh air to really not know where a movie is going, because it kind of throws you off with what it chooses to focus on and what it chooses not to. And this definitely does that. The best parts of this movie, I feel like, are the scares. Definitely. The scares are the best part of this movie. And I will say that this movie has some lighthearted moments. Not necessarily lighthearted. It has humor. This movie has humor. Yes, I found myself laughing at some points. And not laughing where, oh, this is a horror comedy. Not at all. No, it was nice that it wasn't completely overly dreary, because that's not how life happens. How many of us have experienced something tragic or something that just really ruins something for us and puts us in a certain mood? And then there's that moment of, levity of here's a moment that's like, oh, that is kind of weird and ironic. And, I laughed a little bit like, oh, what's going on here? And I think this movie does a great job doing that, to the point where, because of those little moments, you're able to really sink into the scary moments enough, because you're not so exhausted by the dreariness constantly coming at you. I really don't have a glaring worst part when it comes to this film. And I'm not the kind of reviewer that likes to search for anything and something, oh my gosh, that was horrible, I have to big it up in a review. But I will say, when thinking of how someone else might take it when they're watching this, is that the ending is a little vague of how things are left off. The 3 trigger warnings for this film are family death, teeth getting pulled out, and because I know that creeps some people out, and there are images of dead animals. Not a lot, not grotesque, and there's no hurting of animals shown on screen, but there is, for certain ritualistic practices, animals who have passed away that are shown. I would say the emotional carnage you may experience while watching this is grief. If you are someone who has lost someone in your life that you care about, this will definitely bring up those emotions. It doesn't overdo it. It doesn't try to manipulate you to cry or anything like that, but it definitely is a subject that's touched upon. My twisted final grade for Anything for Jackson is an A+. Okay, Twisted People, that is my spoiler-free review of Anything for Jackson. Let me know if you are planning on watching Anything for Jackson. What do you think about movies that show characters in different parts of their life and it's not always skewed young? Let me know, comment down below, and also be sure to subscribe so that you are the first to know when I post my videos. Thanks for watching. Let's get creepy together.